Hi, this is the Be Well with Michelle Greenwell podcast. Our heartwarming conversation is designed to lift you on your wellness journey. Grab your cup of tea and enjoy the podcast. Over the last few decades, researchers have moved their focus into the aesthetic opportunities that the arts provides us in bringing a healing therapy in to engage. We have art, music, dance, singing, and writing. All artistic endeavors often eliminated from school curriculums when money gets tight. And what's not considered is some of the most profound and influential means of gaining mental health and physical vitality is through the arts. For those of us who write poetry as kids in our diaries or played on the school band, we know the power of getting lost in time and space while we were engaged in those activities and moving ourselves away from the angst of the day of the world. We navigated to these creative endeavors in a natural way. In her latest neuro arts project, Renee Fleming, a world-renowned singer, is shining a star on the power of music to help with mental health. Her book, published in 2024, Music and Mind, highlights the science, research, and program development happening globally to bring support to those searching for mental well-being and physical healing. Today, I have Colin MacLeod here, Celtic fiddle guru, intuitive musician, and creative music instructor. He's joining me in conversation to explore beyond the mind and music as we're going to add the addition of movement. And we're looking at the layered healing effect this combination creates for mental health, physical literacy, and effectiveness, and inspiring a new age of neuro arts enthusiasts for wellness. Hello, Colin. Glad you're here.
Hello, Michelle. Lovely to see you.
What tea did you bring to get this conversation started today?
Well, I brought the tea of life, water.
Awesome.
And, you know, it's where water goes, creativity grows.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I was talking to someone today about fascia, and that we were just talking about the fact that fascia is a shapeshifter, and fascia relies on the water in order to be a shapeshifter. And it can transform and mute itself based on how much fluid we do have in the body. So, yeah.
And the idea about fascian, you know, fascian. And, you know, that's maybe creativity coming in to say that it's having a reflective sip or, you know, a reflective drink. And tea is actually one of my favorites. And, you know, the blends from the Cape Breton Tea Company do inspire. And I've also seen different colours with your blends. And, you know, that idea of reflecting and just where it takes us. Mm-hmm. And so what tea have you got today?
Well, I brought Golden Serenity. So if you're going to think about color, so I'm just going to hold it up.
That is absolutely, that's stunning. Wow.
So if you think about when the sun's coming up over the hillside, first thing in the morning, and that brilliance that comes through. Yeah, that's what we've got here. Today I'm hiding a snowman in the bottom of my cup, and we're in, you know, full-blown blizzard here today. So anyway, I'll be revealing my snowman as I go along. So for those people listening for the first time, Colin and I are bringing in the idea of what tea and herbs can bring to support the conversation. So you get a healing session while you're listening today. And Colin will be gracing us with some music. So that'll also be wonderful. But let me start with the affirmation that comes on the Golden Serenity tea. So this tea is part of the Harmony Blend series, which Colin and I took to Tenerife, Spain in the spring this last year. And Golden Serenity is the very first blend, helps to bring us a rootedness or a groundedness. And the affirmation is, if we soften the urge to push through, confidence and authentic love will welcome peace within. So as you're listening today, we hope that you'll kind of consider where there's been some tugging or some pushback or any of those kinds of activities around what you're doing. And consider, if you just let go and sit back with love in your heart, where will you find the peace amongst those actions that might be having that little bit of resistance?
It reminds me of one of my favourite birthday cards of a young gentleman with a determined look in his face and books under his arm, and he's going to the school of the gifted, the school for the gifted, and the door says pull, and he's actually pushing.
Right.
So I think the affirmation is very, very apt.
I'm going to bring in 2 herbs to get the conversation linked in another way. So I'm going to bring in turmeric, and this one is associated with the golden sunshine. So we've got that color of that golden piece, but it's a supportive of renewal, a richness of living, prosperity, and inspiring healing. So when we think about that opportunity to let go of the things that we're kind of feeling the resistance in, and then we just stop, bask in the glow, feel the warmth on our face. In my case, my office is usually yellow, not where I am at the moment, but all of that leads to that renewal and that richness of living. And then I'm going to add in ginger. Somebody asked me about ginger the other day, so I thought this is a good one to bring forward. This is about talent and dreams. It's about the inspiration to find the you inside. Not the person everybody else wants to see, but the person that you are and the one that you want to bring out to shine.
And that is a really good timing with the beginning of a new year. Mm-hmm. And the idea that people look for the new you. Now, if it's a farmer, it might be a sheep. If it's somebody wanting to, do something with trees, it might be YEW. But as we know, there's ourselves as well. Mm-hmm. And the New Year's revolutions or the New Year's resolutions and what they can, bring to the table for people.
As you were saying that, Colin, I was thinking about how people have their New Year's resolutions. But if everything is already inside you, you just have to find you amongst that. Then the resolution of, I'm going to eat better, I'm going to jog more, those kinds of things that people will often say, spend more time with family and friends. But just taking the time to just be centered and present for who are you and what are you bringing to the world doesn't require you to do anything extra except be who you are. I think we forget.
And just create the space for that. Mm-hmm. And honor the space for that.
All right, so ginger, coming to the last piece, is a grounding force. So I think you just found that, people listening, in the way that we even brought forth this conversation. And it provides the space for dreams and ideas to transform, but keeps them grounded. Because sometimes you can have those ideas and it can take you off. I have lots of those. But you need to be able to have that capacity to find the grounding, to find the richness inside, to find the peace that you really want to pull forward. So when you put turmeric and ginger together in this blend, it's very powerful for being a catalyst.
And being a facilitator of life.
Mm-hmm. All right, with your water. Cheers. Thanks for coming on this conversation.
Cheers. Well, thank you. And
to those listening.
It's first thing in the morning here, and the tea's in the packets behind me. So I've got the support from there.
So trying to get our time zones right. I've got the darkness is coming in and you've got the light coming up. All right. The other piece I wanted to bring forward, because you and I are preparing for some special presentations coming up. And I wanted to bring our coaster forward. That's going to be part of our project. So this is artwork done by Tanya Levy. This is part of the Harmony coasters. But this is about finding your guides. So I already mentioned finding the you inside. But we can also ask for support from those people who have been a part of our past, those people who would be mentoring for us, those people that inspire us. There's lots of ways that you can bring guides and support in. I'm just going to read the back side. This is follow the guiding light of your wisdom and way of knowing. Know that all you need is already inside of you. And feel the power of timelessness that frees you from locality.
Could you say that again, please? Because I think that's quite important.
The last one?
Just both ones, the guides? Yeah.
So follow the guiding light of your wisdom and way of knowing. Know that all you need is already inside of you. And feel the power of timelessness that frees you from locality.
We're doing this over 2 time zones. So Michelle, you're based in Cape Breton, the Atlantic time, and I'm actually over in Australia. So it literally is morning and evening.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea about that timelessness, being able to connect, I think, with the possibilities of collaboration and teamwork. And I would say that one of my favourite teas of yours is actually Highland Splendour.
Mm-hmm.
And our listeners might be able to see some pictures of Highland Splendour finding its way to Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
With pictures in Inverurie Castle, the home of the Clan Campbell, and also in front of a genuine Scottish standing stone in Argyll. So, if you're asking me what tea would I bring to the table, it would be Highland Splendour.
I know that's your favorite. And then that one has the intention of standing at the top of the mountain. What do you see? And letting go of all that stuff that often surrounds us when we think we need to take action, we need to do all the work towards the goal. Instead, standing, looking around and go, what do you see? And what is inspiring you to make that next move? Yeah. Awesome. Okay. We want to talk a little bit about some of the ideas that Renee Fleming is bringing up in her book. And they're just concepts that have been around for a long time. You and I have been talking about the fact that music has been around for as long as humans have been around, and longer, because nature has music and animals have music. But the way that they're trying to bring the research in to bring that development up of how important music is to the way that we think and the way that we feel.
And something that just came to mind from the UK, sometimes as a way to confirm or affirm an idea of one's support, you say sound. That sounds good. And in Scotland, I've actually heard the phrase sound as a pound.
Sound as a pound?
Yes, as in, I think, sterling, like a pound in terms of...
Oh, okay. The coin. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And, that's sound as a pound. And the idea of the association of pound, it could be weight, it could be sort of financial, as an affirmation, like a reiteration of something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad they chose a pound rather than 40 pounds or a ton, because that's a lot lighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the idea about sound being able to travel, and so anyway, that's what came to mind.
So let me read a little bit from the book. So we have a chance to dive into a couple of the topics. So I'm just going to hold the book up for those people who might not have seen it yet. So music and mind, And this at the top, it says harnessing the arts for health and wellness. So I'm on page 35. I am reassured by a quick online search that reveals at least 20 health benefits of crying. The sheer abundance of weeping's benefits makes me laugh, and laughing brings at least 10 benefits more. And I don't know why I choose this song, An Evening's Last Farewell, to add to the birds' exuberant morning chorus. I don't understand why I would be willingly choosing sadness, but it feels so good. It's a bracing dive into a cold spring, a glimpse of midnight just before breakfast. Countless clinical studies have now tied the secret of health to moving. There's also great health in being moved, something that produces similar physiology. Think about the old meanings buried in the etymology of emotion. To move and to feel are complements, and the emotion that a tune triggers is a tune-up in how to move more deeply through the wider world. Music makes us go somewhere. It propels us into new states, new vantages, new emotional affordances. If you ask a scientist why music is healthy, the answer will come in units of cortisol, heart rate, and blood oxygen levels. But if you ask the listener, they'd say the music is an offline cognitive therapy. By making us sad in the absence of real tragedy, it leaves us more adept in sadness when life calls for the real thing. Being moved by a song holds the key to mental health. Music says, here's what happened to us. We and those around us move like chords unfolding in time, throwing off fantastic sparks and harmonies, and then the chords end. And here's how to feel sad about that, and how to hear how that sadness too will pass.
That's very profound on so many different levels. And when I think about that, the idea about sadness, sort of like coming to the end of a day and the sun setting, or sort of, there's the warmth of people around you and the social occasion comes to an end, or someone reflecting of memories. And the idea about the song communicating sadness to somebody, and that I think about the term of sympathetic resonance. Mm-hmm. The idea of, when you hear something, just the what impact, what feeling, what does that do to your feelings? And the idea about movement, looking at it in more than one way. There's a physical movement, and then there's a movement of being moved. There's a movement of doing, and then there's a movement of being. And the idea, feeling your emotions come into play. So it's like music gives permission for the emotions to come into play, as well as, physically moving, perhaps dancing or some other activity, running. Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting how people, when they're running, they might listen to music. People, when they're dancing, the music helps the choreograph of the movements, the flow, and the idea about music being that carrot, being that kite of inspiration. It sort of raises, brings people up, or, like you have the string puppets, I forget what they're called.
The marionettes?
The marionettes, and then somebody lifts the puppet up, and then just everything sort of comes alive. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really interesting to see that, or the muse of music, just the dwelling, and a cat muse, mm-hmm. The sounds, and that directs people to, sounds direct people to, they provide a focus. Mm-hmm. And, I think this will be sort of leading more in our conversation. But it's interesting how music leads where it takes us.
Mm-hmm. So we thought what we could do here is have you play something in the note of C, well, or in the scale of C, I guess I should say it that way. And that is a note that starts us with the grounding. It tunes in with the bottom of the neck. The top of the neck. Goes to the top of the shoulders. Also goes to the top of the lower back. So we have this opportunity to tune in to 3 really key aspects in the spine. And then see what happens to your body while you're listening to this music.
So I might start with something that's, I think, the most popular song in the world, and then maybe go into something that's sort of slightly more unfamiliar. Still in the key of C. That might be actually F major I've done. So there I actually found myself doing F major as well, so I brought in B flat, but we still had a C natural. So this is only C this time. So that was actually made up on the spot. And it was a bit rough, but Michelle, did you tap your feet? Did you find yourself tapping your feet?
Oh, it's interesting because you started with happy birthday, so you kind of get lost in the words, right? And you're waiting for the next part to happen so you can sing the next part, even if it's just in your mind. And the body kind of is like anticipating. And then you moved into something that was faster, so my foot started to tap, but then you moved into something slower. So then I was kind of waving, but then you moved back into something where both feet wanted to move. All that because I was listening to the music.
And the journey that it took me on, I thought, well, I'll start with something familiar. And then we were focusing on the key of C, and I found myself going into F major, sort of like another key that, and it's almost like having the intention to do something and being open to actually follow another route. Whereas, you know, if I was saying this is what I've got to do and continue like this, but actually it feels like I should be going somewhere else. So I went somewhere else with the music. And then I thought, well, let's see what it's like to sort of, you know, stay in the key of C. And I bring in the word stick to the key of C. So you can sort of see that stickiness of the rough road as I was finding my feet with the KFC. And it really is an interesting journey to sort of, there's magic whichever path one chooses. There really is. And it's okay to go one path, it's okay to go another, because you can always change. Or you can always maybe bring them together. And the idea that people will follow different paths, the musicians might place different songs, different tunes, or they might make something up on the spot.
Exactly. And so there's two other pieces to that, because one is that idea of exploring what the music makes you want to do physically. But then there's the second part, which we don't often think about, is what does the musician intuitively pick up that they feel they need to move through? And that's something that you and I have been spending a lot of time exploring, is that intuitive nature of music. We can play the music the way it's been written, the way it's been presented, the way a certain person wants to do the cuts on the notes. And then you can have completely letting all of that go to see what kind of exploration or idea is going to come back.
And it's that letting things go, which is, it's like the road to nowhere. I forget who did that album. Maybe it's my next album. And, or it's like thinking that you've come to the end of a road, you come to the end of a path, but actually you can still carry on. It's just, it might be gravel rather than tarmac road.
Might be a meadow.
It might be a meadow. And, you can create your own path. And, Einstein, with bringing things together, he used to play the violin, for example, so music was very much a part of his life. The theory of relativity. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's character Sherlock Holmes playing the violin to think about, bringing all different connections together as a possible path to find a solution to events that have taken place. And that idea of the mystery of music, and it's, or being at a dance in Cape Breton, at one of the village dances, and there's a pattern there, the music, and then the music. I forget who said that musicians might play over 1,200 tunes in an evening's dance session, and the idea that each of these tunes takes things on a different angle, just lifts the enthusiasm, buoys the energy of people dancing to the band.
And it just totally does lift you up. And if we go back to that idea about the emotions, that you have the opportunity to put yourself through certain emotions, knowing that you can pull yourself back out, but you also can put yourself into those emotions and then get stuck there. Because if you're always listening to that music that brings you back to that melancholy, how are you going to pull yourself from there into where you really want to be? And go ahead.
And, I was playing with a couple of friends beside Nelson Lighthouse in Victoria, Australia, and we were actually next to the Great Southern Ocean. And it's a mighty, mighty ocean, and there was no landmass between ourselves and Antarctica. And, I was saying, well, it's really about the emotion of the ocean.
Yeah. And you can just let that wave come in and then pull everything back out and let it go. For those people that maybe want to grip and hold on, especially if you keep choosing to listen to music that always takes you back to the same emotions, as to, where are you gripping that you can't let that ebb and flow happen, to be introduced to something a little bit different, to let the song change, to let the words change, to allow yourself to be transformed and transported. Mm-hmm. So we were going to talk about how the music sets you up to move. So you played those different tunes. My body kept reacting to the music in a different way. And that's the first time, because of the way we wanted to set the conversation up today, it was the first time where I went, oh, Happy Birthday does kind of pull me forward and draw me in. I never noticed before, because you just sing Happy Birthday and you're usually, your eyes are on the person whose birthday it is, or on the candle on the cake. But it actually did pull me in. And then the other one just kind of made me move kind of side to side. And when we're sometimes putting that music on in the background, we're not paying attention to what it's doing to the body and how it's transforming the body, because we may still be focused on what we're doing instead of letting it go. So you and I have done concerts where we've been able to observe. So do you want to talk about what you've observed of people listening to the music?
There's been an involvement with the music, and I think taking people on a journey. If I think about Music in the Landscape, which was one of our more recent concerts as part of the Cape Breton International Festival, the community events, and for example, I think about one of Doug Fraser's paintings. Doug Fraser is one of the well-known established artists on Cape Breton Island. And the idea of the sea and the light, Doug's has, creates beautiful light and brings beautiful light into his paintings. And there was one about the journey of the river going down to the sea, and I think it was Doug and his wife getting up really early in the morning to walk down to the beach to actually look at a full moon, and the journey of going down to the beach, and just taking the audience on that meandering walk down to the beach. And so the engagement there, just,
So you were playing the fiddle,
yes,
to that beautiful piece of artwork, inspiring the people looking at the artwork as to how they might feel because of the music.
Yes. And then we have Donna Hutchinson on harp, with Marie with the spoken word, and I think, the movement there, that's actually, you've incorporated that into a Tai Chi movement video.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's on the YouTube channel. Yeah.
And what's your YouTube channel, Michelle?
At Michelle Greenwell.
Okay, thank you. And then the other one, it was the idea about voice. So one of the things we did was to have everyone humming a note and joining in. And something that sort of inspired me on this present journey, that sort of brought an additional element or angle to the music and movement, is having a conversation over here in Australia at the beginning of the year. And it was around, there was a case study done in 2013 about a choir singing together, and they found that everyone had the same heartbeat. So, it was very interesting to have the concert and have everyone humming and singing and joining in, mm-hmm, with what was going on, and that sort of like full 360 ambience of experience for people, where they could feel and be part of the resonance of things. And I think there was a gentleman who mentioned to you about, he was able to sing. He was able to find his voice.
He didn't think he would be singing. And then he looked at me and he said, "What did I put in the tea?" Because I had introduced, I don't remember which blend it was, might have been Highland Splendor. But I had introduced the tea blend and he'd been sipping on it. And he was not someone who would have vocalized. But as the whole room picked up and started to become one with the music, it became easier and easier for those people who don't really like to voice anything to also become a part of it. And he thought there was magic in the tea to make him do that. Yeah.
And it's almost like just watching the sun setting in Mabu and just having the waves gently coming in to the beach and then rolling back out. And there's sort of like, there's a peacefulness, there's a tranquility in the group that people feel that they can actually, contribute with their thoughts.
And our observations that we've had from those shows is an interesting one, because people will sit down to listen, and they sit down with a posture that is lean back in the chair, maybe put your feet out and cross your ankles, cross your arms, and be prepared to listen. And then once the music gets going, then they start to shift in their seats. And pretty soon they move from being on their tailbone, coming up to sitting a little bit taller. They might move their neck around a bit, move their shoulders, their arms become uncrossed. They might lean in closer to the music. There's all these transformations that are happening. And we thought it was just, people shuffling in their seats. But what we realized by the end of the show was people had shifted in their seats to be straight. Postures had realigned themselves. Heads that were forward from driving or computer time were actually finding their way back to being on top of the shoulders. And those crossed arms of, I'm here to listen, softened to, I'm here to be part of the experience. And then, of course, you threw in some vocals on top. So, but it was such a beautiful transition to watch.
And for these people to be present and know that, have fun and genuinely relax. I mean, the hospitality in Cape Breton, folks, if you ever get the chance to go there, it's truly magical. And I think especially during Kitchen Fest or the
Celtic
summer
colours,
Celtic colours, it's just something where 200-300 community events happen along with the official festival for Celtic colours, and it's magical.
And I think one of the things that, as we're looking at arts and the idea of, you and I have been talking about, we've got arts, so we've got music and how people can engage with music, but we also have layers of things happening. So we have color, we have herbs, if you're sipping on tea, and then we have these movement pattern pieces, the way that we move, the way we put them together, and our intentions. And what you and I have really discovered across this was particularly at the end of the shows, where people would wander off at the end of a show and they'd be talking to each other out to the car, quick to get to their car because they wanted to get out of the parking lot before the traffic jam happened. That didn't happen at the end of the show. At the end of the show, they wanted to go and speak to the artist. They wanted to have a conversation with their neighbor about what it was like to just hum that tune. And then they wanted to stand around next to the teas. And even though they might not have been interested in purchasing a tea, they wanted to be next to them to have a conversation and just express some of the things and ideas that came forward. And it was a way of opening up people to a conversation that kind of gets missed when you leave the show and you hurry out to your car. And you don't necessarily have access to the musicians either. They're coming out of the green room and they might not come out to the front of the theater to be seen by the public. And so you have this disconnect, but we had this opportunity for everybody to be one, and to be together, and that expression that could come forward.
And the idea of ambience, and even humbiance, and just, that the people felt really relaxed to have these conversations, to go and speak with people, or, just see their neighbours and find out what everyone was up to. That informal being is something that all those elements contributed to. That they contributed to a relaxed ambience.
So we were going to talk a little bit about the physical aspect of the experience of being in the music, and not necessarily that you went to the dance to hear the music and you were going to dance. You already had that idea of the movement piece, but the way that you do want to move when you're sitting in a chair. So I wanted to bring forward some of the physiological things that happen while you're listening, and it just happens organically, especially here in Cape Breton, because as soon as you play a fiddle tune, in the hall is a hum of feet as all the feet start beating to the music. Now, the thing about toe tapping is you wouldn't necessarily get this in classical music. So classical music, you kind of head off somewhere into a beautiful imaginative space, and your mind can wander as you're hearing the beautiful sounds. In the Celtic music, there's this driving beat that arrives, and toe tapping happens for everybody here. And it means that you really have the opportunity to relax the body and let it open, all the joints to open up. So I wanted to talk just a bit about what that pumping action means. And inspired by the music, that pumping action provides a way for us to get the circulation in the foot back up to the core of the body. So the blood is moving, the lymph is moving, and we have this way to start to create chemical changes in the body as a result of things moving, aside from what's going on with the heart center and the emotions that are coming out, because that's all creating chemical reactions as well. But I wanted to take us a little bit deeper into the talus joint. So right, I'm using my wrist for those people that are listening to the podcast, can't see. I'm just moving my hand, and there's a little dimple where my arm comes into my hand. And that joint is the same on the ankle. And that joint has the opportunity to connect information about the space in the joint back into the amygdala and into the brain, where emotions are centered. So those survival primary emotions. We're toe tapping. We are a part of the music, we're one with the music, and we're releasing emotions as we're doing that. It's such an amazing, amazing opportunity. How does it feel from the musician's perspective? Because I know you do pub sessions, and you could be in a full concert, you could be three of you. What does it feel like when those toe taps start up and you can hear how the people are involved in the music?
It's a way of communication, a way of bringing people together so that everyone in the room is involved. And, some people are visual in what they see. Some people are oral. And the idea of the toe tapping is a communication of enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
A visual communication of enthusiasm. And it's sort of, that communication is infectious. And that can come through in a person's playing. And sometimes you'll see the joyous nature. I was going to use the word feverish, but just depending on on the level of enthusiasm, you can sort of measure it by the height that the toe comes off the ground and then goes back down. And the more enthusiasm there is, the further from the ground that the toe might come in terms of height, and then so it's almost like it could be a percussive sound as well. And so there's that enjoyment, there's that communication of enjoyment. And I'm thinking with the faster, more upbeat rhythms of music. And the thing I would say as well is there's patterns in Celtic music. Mm-hmm. And those patterns allow the pumping action or facilitate the pumping action, so that it's also a way to keep in time. It's a communication between the musicians and also between the audience. Mm-hmm. A communication of the levels of enthusiasm and wonderment, you know, and the idea of the percussive nature as well. I think, you know, just with Cape Breton, just with the informal rhythms that are created as well, mm-hmm. with the feet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's like a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. It's like a heartbeat of the concert or the pub session. And it's also a way that people can keep in time. So you sort of building on what's going on. And the emotions, you know, somebody at the end of the day, I'm also an accountant, and very much for me, used to live in Edinburgh, and I'd play in the pubs in Edinburgh after a day behind the computer, so to speak. And I find it as a really, really wonderful way to just relax and just to sort of, you know, let the emotions of the day as a way to unwind. Mm-hmm. And it's so inspiring just to be at a concert and see the musicians smile, to see the audience smile and hear that enthusiasm. And with the tapping of the toes, with that rhythm and the release of the emotions, or sometimes people might go, whew, you know, that's a very polite Scottish way. You'll get more enthusiasm. I'm only doing it here because I'm not sure where our listeners might be. You know, they might be in the office, or they might be out walking their dogs, or they might just be at home. But if you can imagine that infectious, joyous yelp or yell, mm-hmm. and you know, we're everyone together, and it's that idea of sympathetic resonance. Mm-hmm. That idea of one person's enthusiasm captures the imagination of somebody else in the room, and just all of a sudden, the simmering turns into a boil of enthusiasm, mm-hmm. a boil of joyous enthusiasm. And I've seen that at sessions. I see that. And I've seen that when I'm in Cape Breton, just the joyous nature of everyone getting together. And I think, when you go along to some of the events, like at the Red Shoe Pub, for example, or some of the concerts that you've managed as well, and you know, musicians. People come together from all parts of the world, and there'll be that. It's almost like it's like an international language, mm-hmm. and cold weather, hot weather, the toe tapping still continues. And one of the things about the toe tapping is you can do it in your own home. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can do it in the pub. You can. So it's something that is adaptable to any environment. And I think one of the things that when we were doing, when we did our introduction to etiquette, you know, for the Cape Breton Colours Festival, you know, what are some of the things that first timers going to some of the concerts? one of the things I remember is that you mentioned about the difference between clapping and the tapping of the feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you would do that. You wouldn't want to be clapping while Celtic music was going on, because that detracts from what's happening musically. So you do the rhythm through the feet. But you can even feel that if you start clapping, how constricting that is. Yes, you get that beat in there, which is fine if that's what you're looking for. But as soon as you start tapping, the joints in the body all release. And so you have this opportunity for the pelvis to rock, the shoulders to rock, the skull gets to rock at the top of the head. There's this whole massage that's going on through the whole system, because of the way that you can react to the music, and it's in an acceptable way.
And it pulls you through your emotions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to insert in here a couple of ideas with the toe tap, because on the lower leg, you've got the peroneus, which is on the outside edge of the leg. You've got tibials, which help you to take your toes up and down. You've got your gastrocnemius, or your calf muscle. And you've got, which usually ends up quite restricted, especially if people wear high-heeled shoes. That ends up very tense. And then you have soleus, which is below that, which often can actually get into knots and cause the beautiful plantar fasciitis trouble that people have on the bottom of their feet sometimes. And that's all from tension. And those muscles are all related to hormones and circulation. So as you were talking, heating things up, I was kind of chuckling, thinking about, as that toe gets going, you actually are releasing heat. You are releasing anything that's built up, anything that's been locked up, and providing a way for it to open. The peroneus muscle helps to balance the emotions of fear and anxiety. So to be able to sit, like you said, in the living room, you could put your music on and you could have your toe tapping, and you can actually regulate yourself down to that fear and anxiety letting go, just with that little toe tap. And if you wanted to think about fight or flight, so if you've spent a lot of day in front of your computer, driving a car where you've been locked in positions, you've been telling your body it's not safe all day long because you've been in this tight position. That music allows you to rock and open that up. And then the fight or flight response can disappear. That freezing can let go. And that calf muscle is so incredibly important to that whole process, because it's ready to help you run if you need to run. But you're actually saying, let's get going, but let's get going rhythmically. And we're going to bring that rhythm into the body, and the joints open, the tissue all responds. And it responds all the way through the body, which is so amazing as well. So if you're thinking about that person that sat down, crossed their arms, leaned back and said, I'm here to listen. And that's the kind of the look they gave. And then the person that goes out the door is the one that's been moving around in the seat, and the toe's been tapping, and they've been just so actively participating in the music. It's been a true transformation.
I don't know if it's from, and I don't know if I've got the right word, from subjective to something else.
Mm-hmm.
From subjective to smiling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from subjective to relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
Just having fun.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I want to bring in another little piece, because I've been playing around. You and I are researching and diving deep for the performances coming up. And so I wanted to bring forward Power and Force, Power versus Force, which is written by David Hawkins. And
2017, I think, edition.
I go look in the back here. Last one was 2012, the last edition.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, according to this one, you might have it more recent. But what's interesting, I'm just on page 8283, is the idea of memory and images. So I wanted to bring this forward, because a lot of people will pull up a song that they remember from their teenage years, when they were dating, parties they used to go to, that kind of stuff. And they'll keep going back there. and then pulling up the emotions of that time. And they may want to experience things in that time, but then they also have their current present time. And what is the support that bringing that music back and forth across time does? And I just wanted to bring forth David Hawkins just because he talks about memory and he talks about the relationship with memory. And if you're looking at music, if you want to move yourself forward, you want to put yourself into a new space and you want to let go of some old things. If you are pulling up memories that keep pulling you back into your childhood, back into your teenage years, then what filter do you want to be looking at them through? Do you want to look at them through that teenage filter, or do you want to look at them through the person you are now? And music can help you transform that if you come in with the right context around that. And I think for lots of people, we put the music on and we go, oh, that reminds me of, which is awesome in some cases. And but then where's it going to take you? How could you use that piece of music to move you from that to be able to move your experiences forward? You want to talk a little bit about that for you as an intuitive musician, how that's even transformed for you?
The idea of being in a space, or if I may bring in movement, the idea about people moving through something, like it could be an exercise, and music taking, following that path of the movement, and it sort of takes somebody through takes their emotions with the physical as well, so they can go on that journey. So it's like they're bringing all of themselves to the table, and that's what I see with your music and movement classes. And I think that's something that we might talk about in further podcasts, just where that might be going. And what it makes me think about is our time at the kinesiology conference in Tenerife back in May. The idea about music helping people to move through emotions and movement, so it's like the being and the doing, that collaboration, that teamwork. And so I trained classically at school, and so I have a love of classical music. I have a love of Scottish fiddle music. I have a love of Irish fiddle music, and I use the umbrella of Celtic. And in Scottish fiddle music, I used to go in for competitions as a teenager, and you'd play a slow air, then you'd play a march, a suspect, and a reel. And just thinking about that from there is the idea about melancholy sadness through to sort of slightly faster tempo, slightly more faster tempo, and then faster tempo again. And the idea about the honouring of each of the emotions of a person, for example, sadness, a way to release, the slow air might be written for somebody who's passed away. So honouring that space is a way to be able to release the sadness that sort of tugs at the heartstrings. The idea of the march, perhaps people are walking a long distance, and the idea that rhythm helps them to sort of keep going. The idea of the suspect, the dance, the dance, the movement as a way to keep exercising, as a way to keep moving, and the way the patterns of the music, they repeat, the patterns repeat, and that idea, it might be actually quite an uplifting tune, for example, the Duke of Gordon's Birthday. And then the real, something faster again, it might be The Kilt Is My Delight. And somebody wearing a kilt. I really like wearing a kilt, and just that, the enthusiasm, the honouring of somebody wearing a kilt. And
go ahead.
And we're pulling people through the emotions, and we're also pulling them with the movement. So there's a being and there's a doing, like in what Renee's talking about with Music in the Mind, page 35.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then one of the areas that you and I have spent a lot of time in the work that we're doing and the programs we're developing is bringing forward intention and goal setting. So we did that at the start with the T. You did that with the intention of how you unfolded the songs that you wanted to play. And just as you were describing even the order of those pieces for competition, we have this opportunity to transform and to move forward, but we need to know where we're going. And what you and I've discovered along the way is there are a lot of people that actually don't know where they're going. They think they do, but they're not sure. And they either get stuck in the present because they can't see anything forward from what they're currently experiencing. And then you have the people that are stuck in the past. So I've been bringing up those pieces of music sometimes that we continually bring up to kind of put us into that mood or emotion that we feel like we need to be in. And then it's how to move ourselves forward from that and making choices then that will transform us. Or you're listening to a musician who can play intuitively, and exactly what you did when you went to play today, you said, I needed to go to F, and then I came back around to C, is that opportunity to know where you're going and then be able to move ourselves in there. And I'm glad that you brought up that movement helps you to move, because you're taking that frozen piece and letting it go, and you're allowing for that transformation to happen. But it's important to have that intention and that goal setting there. And we wanted to lay that information out for people when they're thinking about how music can heal. You do need to know where you're heading so that you have a compass.
And, the road to nowhere might actually lead somewhere. And, it just, there's a skill in goal setting. And I do think it's probably worthy of a separate podcast or a separate video.
Yes.
Just the skill. And I think we've been talking about, well, just to give a taster, the idea of my imagination is the goal should be stretching. So it's like a balloon, the balloon basket lifting off the ground, and you've still got the ballast. So it's stretching in a way that releases some of the ballast, and that could be emotional. It might be, setting a new goal to have fun.
Yeah.
And, so there is the idea of intention and focus to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That kite of intention and focus.
Exactly. Yeah. So we wanted to bring forward the opportunity for us to just experience a little something more. And we wanted to, we should bring in one more idea, I think, and then have you play. So one of the concepts we talked about the other night was the idea of being the victim. So something happened in your past, something happened in your life, experiences unfolded in ways that you didn't want them to, and then you hold on to the emotions of that, and it plays a victim kind of role. And then it ends up with a frequency with it. So it ends up with things like fear, anxiety, withdrawal from community. So we've talked about all those pieces already today. And what we want to do is create the space for that paralyzed, frozen time to be let go. So as you said, get into that hot air balloon, let those ballasts fall off to the side. They are no longer important for where you're going. Or you've set that kite up and it's free on that string to lead you where you want it to go. And I just wanted to bring forward David Hawkins' work one more time because I think it lends itself really well here. And David did a map of consciousness, and in the center of the map is trust. If we don't have trust, then we have lower emotional frequencies that we work with. And so that's where the fear, the anxiety can kind of come in and drop us down. But if we provide ourselves with the place to trust. Now, if I was to get into that hot air balloon, I do not like heights. So trusting that it would be safe to go up in that balloon would be a challenge for me. And I'm sure as the ballast fell away and I started to climb and I saw the beauty up there, I would probably overcome that. But it is that difficulty of letting go of those pieces. But if we can get to that trust piece, then we can rise to the other place, which you and I were unfolding about, which is the opportunity to be visionary. And from that vantage point in the balloon, when you've let go, you've trusted everything can be where it needs to be, you look down. Now what do you see? There's a highland splendor from the top of the mountain. Yep. You look around, what is that view? And when we get to that space, then the emotions move over to joy, serenity, which we're drinking, golden serenity. But we have that transformative process that can happen, which allows us to expand our vision. And I just wanted to bring that forward because you and I have been talking about some of the work that's coming up, working with people who have mental health challenges, PTSD, they've had trauma, all looking for ways to build resiliency. And there's that medium piece of trusting and allowing yourself to go to that upper level. You want to talk about that a little bit?
So there's the Touch for Health conference in San Diego, and that's on the 2nd to the 5th of April. And then we also are part of a weekend with Marathon Jam, who are a group who play for Army veterans and also first responders, and they're in North Carolina. And it's a weekend of movement, music and art, healing through movement, music and art. And just sort of putting things forward for people so that they could have a taste of ways to build resilience. And you never know unless you bowl with things. You never know unless you go. And the idea of sometimes until, I remember the first time I flew over Mount Everest in a plane at 33,000 feet and played the violin. I didn't know that was possible until I did, but you can have a seed of an idea, a seed of inspiration, and you just never know where it can go. And it's really being okay, the idea of being okay to doing something to take your next step or steps forward.
And you brought up Mount Everest, and you had been talking in one of our other conversations about the fact that in the back of your mind was you'd love to be able to do that. It was
Yes.
a fleeting thought.
It was.
But the lovely thing about music and movement is it can provide the way for energy to shift towards goals. So you have those kinds of thoughts. You don't think too much about them, but then you're playing music, you're dancing, you're just engaged in some kind of transformative piece of moving forward. There's a flow established. You ended up with an invitation to go that you never could have imagined. And so sometimes people try to do that linear road of, I know all the steps to put everything in place so I can get there, which is all effort. And then you have, gee, it would be fun one day to go do that. And then you just left it to the universe. And the universe said, there's this great way we can make this happen. And boom, there it was. Yeah. So I just wanted to bring your story forward that way, because as people are listening and thinking about all the ideas we brought forward about music, mind, and movement, it really is a way for us to be connected to the heart, connected to the heartbeat of others, connected to the world through a heartbeat, through music, movement, and to be transformed if we can trust, let go, and let it happen. And that's can be the tough part, but the most rewarding.
The most rewarding, and I think the rhythm of your community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's the other piece we also wanted to bring up is that idea of community, because a lot of people, when they don't feel well, they have issues come up, they stay home, they isolate themselves, they don't want to complain to their friends again because they don't feel well, but they don't go out into community, they isolate. And that's when that frequency can drop down. And you can put music on and tap your toe. But my gosh, it's so much better in a room full of musicians and people who are all there for the same purpose. It just feels so good.
You get to feel the full enchilada of the experience.
Right. Okay, so with that, we thought we'd finish off with some music for people to have that lift up. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move my chair back, and I'm going to do a seated Donu. So I'm just going to do very simple arm movement. But as I explained to someone today, less is more. And this is actually going to be moving the fascia within the whole center of the body, making the organs very happy, opening up the breath, relaxing and calming the vagus nerve, and all of the most amazing music at the same time. So this might be something you want to come back to and just have this little clip. So I'm going to step back and let you do your magic there, Mr. Colin. Perfect. Can you break into a jig for me? Awesome. How does the energy feel for you?
Feels a lot brighter. I felt brighter, and I found myself tapping my feet as well.
There we go. Beautiful. Well, we hope that what we've done is inspire you with the heart of music, mind, and movement, and the opportunity to really change the way you may be directing your life, or the way that you're feeling and using the emotions, or the way that you're providing a way for you to get out in community and be a part of things, and to know that there are programs available to help support you, and that Colin and I are adding those online, we're adding those in person, we're attending conferences, and we really just want you to know that there's just so much joy that can happen between music and movement. Colin, how can they find you?
At CelticFiddleGuru.com, or probably within the next couple of months, harmonicsforbusiness.com as well. I'm on Facebook as Celtic Fiddle Guru, and also Instagram. And there's, I think, on your website, there's the mini course for building resilience.
Mm-hmm. So for those people that want a little bit of movement and music, and it'll lead you right through a whole process to be able to really help you gain energy, we'd be happy to have you participate in that. And you can find that on thegreenwellcenter.com. And that's under building resiliency. Awesome.
And
thank you, Colin.
You're very welcome. And Michelle, where can people find you? greenwellcenter.com.
And capebrettontea.ca. And I'll say cheers from what's left of my golden serenity tea. Thank you so much, Colin.
Cheers. You're very welcome.
Be well, everyone, and thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening to Be Well with Dr. Michelle Greenwell. There are a couple of resources I want to just point out. When you go to the website greenwellcenter.com, you'll have a pop-up window. That pop-up gives you the top 8 easy stress releasers that you can use every day. That's something you can put beside your computer, the bathroom mirror, beside the bedside table. A great resource. Also, my YouTube channel. It is full of playlists with all kinds of different ways that you can activate energy and bring vitality into your day. You can find that when you go to YouTube at Michelle Greenwell. And last, if you're a Linktree person, Linktree, linktr.ee/Greenwell Center. That has all my resources in one spot. Those are for intricate little things that you can't get everywhere. And it's a wonderful way for me to be able to share all the different aspects of the kind of work I do. So thank you for listening. Be sure to drink that tea. And if you want to have the tea blend that was shared in the podcast today, then be sure to check out capebrettontea.ca. Have a wonderful day.